25. If you're older than 25,
Right.
we don't want you. I'm like, what the hell? And now it's going back to that, thankfully, now where it's like, oh, we want the guys on top right now are like the Edges, the AJ Styles, the
Christian Cages. And...
Randy Orton, Christian Cage. Christian
Yeah.
Cage is one of the best work I've ever seen him do in his.
Oh,
he's almost
yeah.
50.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Oh, hell, we got
seasoned
Sting
guy
in his
that should be in
60s.
his spot. Sting's a madman.
Yeah.
But look at him. I mean, look at him. AJ Styles and Randy Orton came back looking like $1 million, you know?
Yeah.
The older guys, I think they've kind of figured that out. Like, yeah, we need the younger talent, but we've got to have the older guys out there to coach them and lead them along. The next 5 years, I think wrestling's just going to keep booming, you know?
Yeah.
God willing and the creek don't rise, you know, with all the craziness in the world and whatnot. If we don't obliterate ourselves first, I think it'll do really well. It's getting to be such a mixed bag of things. You're getting more, and that's one of the things that caused one of the booms in the '80s was you had pop culture and stuff like that mixed with wrestling, and it got it into the mainstream media. You had Mr. T, you had Cyndi Lauper, you had all these people that were coming in, and it started that big boom. And then in the 90s, you know, when you had the Attitude Era, you had Mike Tyson, you had, you know, Floyd Mayweather, you had all these celebrities that were intermingling with wrestling, which at the time, all you really had was WWE. So there was only one place for them to go. Well, now it's kind of flipped. You've got AEW, and they're bringing in, you know, different pop culture references, different bands. They're trying different stuff. They're partnering with New Japan. New Japan is releasing guys and sending them over here. The internet's just blowing stuff wide open because now people go, oh, well, who's Okada? Let me look up this guy from New Japan, Okada, Takeshita. Who's Takeshita? Let me look him up. You know, where did Nakamura come from? They can look it up, and then it's like, oh, wow, New Japan Wrestling. Oh, Big Japan Wrestling. This is around. Okay, this Noah. This is really cool. And it snowballs. So when they're bringing these guys over, now it's not just you don't have to rely on the program to show you who it is and teach you who it is. Fans can look them up. And it's really like exposing people to this whole diverse realm of wrestling to where it's not just, oh, here's your Southern Memphis wrestling and that's it. That's all wrestling is. No, here's Kenta, here's Arrow Boy, here's Aerostar, here's, you know, El Vikingo, all the lucha guys. You know, and you can crap on any style. You might not like a certain style, you know, because I see people do that. Like, oh, that's gymnastics. That's not wrestling. It's all wrestling. It's all entertainment. Yeah. I don't care what anybody says. You can't look at me and go, these guys aren't some of the most amazing athletes in the world because you think it's not your style of wrestling. Just watch something else then. If you don't like deathmatch wrestling, don't watch deathmatch wrestling.
Yeah. I say that all the time because wrestling is a buffet. It needs to be a buffet. Because, I mean, it's the same, it's entertainment. Like, yeah, Vince really put in the entertainment part of sports entertainment, but even before that, it was always kind of sports entertainment because it's sports mixed with entertainment. And so you need to have all of that, whether it be the comedy, whether it be the death match, whether it be the lucha, whether it be the, you know, ZSJs versus Bryan Danielson, or the hard-hitting stuff from Japan, or even Southern wrestling is going to be different from wrestling from the North, and, you know, British wrestling is different than Japanese wrestling, and, you know, everything in between, you need it. Even the intergender wrestling, is really kind of a sticking point for some people of like, well, I don't think that that's right. And it's like, that's, you know, completely, that's your opinion and that you have a right to it. A lot of people think that if done right.
But if they go watch Mortal Kombat, they ain't mad about Sonya Blade fighting.
Right.
Because
or, you know, or when,
that's the
when Ronda.
It's entertainment. Yeah. Like, there's no veil. We're not stupid. Like, and that's one of my things. It's like, the most over guy in the last 30 years was a guy that pretended to be a zombie and shoot lightning from his fingers. All right? Like, you can't tell me that wrestling has to be real because that's bullshit. It hasn't been real since the 70s. You know, and even then, the guys in the Carnies did crazy stuff. You know, they were wrestling bears. You know, it's like there's always been this catch of entertainment. Like, you want to suspend belief, yeah. You know, don't insult the guy while the show's going on, of course. You know, try to make it as interesting for what you're doing as possible. But, like, people crapped on Kenny Omega for doing that match with the girl, with the 9-year-old girl.
Right.
But you have to understand the cultural differences, too. That was done in Japan. In Japan, they know it's a work. They know it's a show. And they would never, most of them would never disrespect one of the athletes because they put that girl over and made her look like $1 million. Their thought on it is, that guy's an amazing performer. He went out there and made a 9-year-old girl look awesome if he had the time of her life. And we look at it over here and go, oh my God, they're killing wrestling. No, they're not. They're opening wrestling up to a whole different fan base. That's it.
Right. And that's what you have to do with wrestling. You have to show different sides of wrestling that will attract different people. And if you have more eyeballs on pro wrestling wins. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. The person who now watches wrestling on a regular basis got into it because of this one thing. So what's so bad about that?
Well, exactly. It's like if you're talking to a horror movie buff and you start talking about rom-coms, they're not going to be interested.
Right.
Like, oh, that's not a movie. That's that cheesy frou-frou stuff. I like horror movies. You know, it's just a flavor, you know. And, yeah, you want to, depending on the match, you know, you want to suspend belief. You want to make people believe what's going on. But what you're trying to get them to believe could be a plethora of things. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to get them to believe that this is a legitimate fight and these guys are trying to hurt each other and they hate each other. It might not be that. That might not be what the situation calls for. Like, I love the spot monkey. I love the spot monkey comments too. We're like, oh, these guys are doing so many spots. That's just not believable. You wouldn't do that in a real fight. And I've done vets and stuff before too. I'll see them post something up like that, and I'll send them a match of like, I'll send them a match of like Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid, and be like, look at these spot monkeys. Or Eddie Guerrero with Black Tiger working with Pegasus Kid, or working with Great Sasuke or somebody like that, somebody that you know they respect. Like, man, look at these spot monkeys. Good grief, where'd they get this stuff back in the day? I'm sure a number of them hate me sometimes. I'm like, you're being biased. Stop. You sound bitter. Just knock it off.
Right. Just enjoy wrestling for being wrestling. Like, it's so dumb. Now, I have a segment on the show. I call it the 5 count. It's just 5 random questions. Just answer as quick as possible.
Oh, God. I apologize in advance for any random things that comes out of my mouth because I just say what comes to the top of my head.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's what we all want. What emoji do you use most?
The little cross finger sign right now because I'm doing a whole trust me thing.
If you owned a liquor company, a brewery, a winery, or a coffee shop, which one would it be, and what would the name be?
Coffee shop. More than likely, yeah, probably a coffee shop. I'd probably call it Hot Beans.
I love it. That's good. What are 3 things still on your bucket list?
Wrestle in Japan, wrestle in Europe, and one that'll probably never happen, but I at least want to meet. One was wrestle and work with the Great Muta, but since he's retired, as long as I can do something in some capacity with him, which 2 of those may actually be happening this year, so I'm happy about that.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Who or what inspires you?
Life. Life inspires me.
Love it.
And my kids. Life in general, though, man. I don't know. I like life. I live very simple. I try not to overcomplicate things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I lived in a bus for a year. I lived in my van for a year before that, and people were like, "Man, how do you get by with really nothing?" I was like, "In my bus, I was like, I have a place to sleep. I have a place to potty, get cleaned up, cook. Like, what else do you really need? You know, I'd get by with $500 a month, and I'd be fine." But yeah, you gotta, and I was one of those ones, like, I would work myself to death. Like, I would work like a dog. And I just stopped doing that. Like, I had to. It was so bad on my health. When I was in college, I I was doing school full time, working full time, wrestling full time, plus family stuff because the girl I was with, she had kids and this and that, and you know, I've got a mom with some health issues, and it put me in the hospital for like a week. My blood pressure spiked like bad, yeah. The guy was like, "You're gonna have a heart attack if you don't chill out," and I almost did it one other time again after that, just taking care of everybody else's stuff. But I looked at that, I was like, I can't do this. I was like, if you're lucky, you get solid 90 years around. Like, I want to enjoy them. I want to, like, live life and not just work my way through it. That's just senseless. And I almost quit wrestling a couple times. And there was times Mom was like, you got to think about slowing down here and there eventually. And as time went on, like when I would slow down, my mom would actually look at me, and she looks at me now too when I do it. She'll go, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just kind of like cutting back a little bit." She's like, "Don't do it." She's like, "Go do your stuff." She's like, "You will be miserable. I know you." She's like, "Go do what you're going to do." She's like, especially you're in your 40s, you've been doing it this long. You are not a sedentary person. Go enjoy your life. And I think part of that goes back to her. She worked really hard her whole life, and it messed her health up. And she was like, "Don't do what I did." And I can respect that. And I try to get my girlfriend to do the same thing. You know, she's got kids and stuff, so you got responsibilities. But she'll get under the cake. I think I'm gonna get a second job. I'm like, don't get a second job. I'm like, we'll figure something out. Money wise, it'll come. The stress ain't worth it. And
right.
Like when we started dating, I lived in the bus, and she was like, "Well, where do you live?" I was like, "Right out there in that bus." She was like, "Really?" And I looked at it, and she was like, "Oh, this is decked out." You know, I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I don't have an apartment. I have my phone. I have my bus. I had a van at the time too for short travel, and I would do like Uber Eats runs and stuff. I was like, I got out of that rat race. And it's like I would rather live off of $500 or $1,000 a month and struggle at times than ever get back into that and just kill myself early. It's just not for me. If that's for other people, that's great. But for me, it's just I've seen too many people get tore apart by it, and I don't want to do it no more.
I fully appreciate that, and yeah, I get it. There's too much. We were raised in the time of, you know, you needed to always have a job, a house. You need to, you know, have the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, which I don't know how you're having half a kid, and you know the marriage and everything. And it's just, sometimes working those 9 to 5 jobs just is a slower death than some cancers. So yeah, if it doesn't work for you, find out what does work for you, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, then you're doing good.
Right. I think a lot of people are afraid to bet on themselves on that. They're afraid to kind of like fail, and that security is a good thing, which it can be a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think people realize the potential they have when they like really put their faith in nothing but themselves and that hustle and let their creativity go. Yeah, you're going to backslide a bit, like you're going to fall on your ass, but you'll learn so much more, and like you'll come out a better person for it in the end.
Yeah, without a doubt. And number 5, what would you tell your 17-year-old self?
Don't become a professional wrestler. Go to college, kid. Man, I don't know. Probably that you're going to have a hell of a run. I probably would advise myself to look into schooling or something, a little bit more of an education along with the wrestling, to give a little bit better footed. But that's about it, maybe, you know? Stay away from the redheaded training. I don't know. Yeah, probably that. Yeah, and that. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Now, if people wanted to find out more about you, follow you online, see you live, buy your merch, how can they do all the things?
I'm on all the things. I'm on Facebook under Michael Joseph Zodiak. That one's spelled with the Zodiak. I'm the only one on there like that. And then I've got my Zodiac the Mystic Facebook page. I'm on YouTube under Zodiac the Mystic. I started spelling Zodiac with an X recently. There was a reason for that. Yeah, I can't really trademark or copyright anything with the way it's spelled before. So I got looking up that, and even the short